Okay, so officially I'm welcoming you to the ALS meeting and alternative language services. So my name is Christelle Estrada, and I've been in this position for, I don't know, it seems like about 50 years, but I think it's only 6 or something. I don't know. And before that, I was a secondary language arts person, as well as I was actually the professional development director in Salt Lake School District in 2000 or 2001, and left and became the academic officer for Stanford New Schools. And the only reason I'm giving you that background is that, I've been committed to teaching and learning and education of children for a long time. I think I'm the oldest one on this call. In 4 years, I'll send you an invitation to my 80th birthday. And so I've taught every grade except for grades that are, you have to be really gifted to teach, which is kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. Taught all the other grades as well as graduate school also. And the whole thing for me is adults learning together and creating a community where we actually share what's making a difference for students. For me, it's really about working for the students of Utah. I mean, that's kind of the way I frame my work at USBE, which means, I'm working for you because you directly influence the way in which students have opportunities that they might not otherwise have. So we're just going to do brief introductions to people who are new from USBE. So my administrative assistant, Renee Medina, she passed away last year unexpectedly. Was very young. And then we searched and found someone who has lots of interesting experiences and has been a wonderful support for me, for Jeff Ojeda and migrant education, and McKinney Vento, as well as Chuck Foster for tribal nations. So Madeline, I'm going to have you introduce yourself and just say a little bit about, kind of your experience, which I think everyone here will find really interesting wherever you are on the screen. I'm using a tiny screen, so I can't really see. Here she is.
Oh, you're good. Right. I'm Madeline. As Christelle said, I am new. I actually have not even been in my position for a month yet. Super excited about it though. I enjoy working with everybody. I was previously in Germany for the past 3 years due to military. Really cool experience, culture shock for sure. I have had my mom, who's been teaching my whole life. She actually just stopped teaching 6th grade about 3 or 4 years ago. So I've been a part of the school life my whole life, being a student. And then I helped all the teachers at my mom's school. So this position for me is really nice because I can kind of give back again. And it just reminds me of working with the schools all over again. And it's a great time, but I look forward to working with all you. If you have any questions, definitely reach out. If I don't have the answer, I ask whoever I need to find the answer for, but I'll try to help you out as much as I can.
Thanks, Madeline. The other thing that's important is that Madeline and Becky Peters, is really wonderful, and she's helped Madeline be able to respond really quickly to people who are taking 3 different courses in our catalog, which is on the Title III website. So people who are new, you should go to the USBE Title III website and look at professional learning, and you'll see a catalog. And most of the courses form the basis for a lot of the district and charter competency-based programs. And it's actually the university courses that a team designed. I think we designed it 7 years ago for SUU. So it's actually based on research. And all of those courses are available for districts to use in their Canvas system. And all you have to do is email at me. And the point is the way in which professional learning happens should be situated with the resources of each LEA. It shouldn't be determined by, somebody else who's never been in the classroom. Like immediately successful in relationship to what's working in the classroom, instead of so theoretical that it doesn't really support. Theory and research is really important, but the question is, how is it implemented? So one course that has been, is an ebook based on the medical sciences research about preventing bullying as a public health issue for those who are bullied, the students who are actually doing the bullying, and the bystanders who view the bullying, and the impact on every person's physiology in relationship to the release of cortisol and the damage it does to the internal organs. So it's a different way of thinking about bullying and using it as an economic base for public health issues related to, the growth of healthy children who can contribute and support their lives in a very different kind of way, so that, the habit of bullying doesn't unduly impact, not to mention the school culture. I mean, we're talking about everything in relationship to behavior. So that's one course that's been very popular with many, many, many educators who are taking it. And it's an ebook. And I would really encourage you to go to the Title III website where it says professional learning, and then check out the catalog. The other course is the overview of the 5 domains for the TESOL, which is really important because that is the basis for teacher preparation and universities being accredited for their ESL programs. And it's an overview. So it's called Supporting Students Learning English. And it's, I think, a 12-week online open enrollment course. And then the other course, the third course, is actually about the civil rights related to students learning English and their families, which, as you know, there are many districts under OCR in Utah. And part of that I attribute to is not really deeply understanding the civil rights of students and the legislation that's connected to it. So it's not an issue of blame, but it's actually an issue of knowledge and how it is that we make better decisions related to, one example is registering students, in public education. So I would really suggest that you go to the website and look for that. Okay, Maggie, I'm going to have you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Maggie Cummings. I been in education for a very, very long time. I was most recently at Meadowlark Elementary, where we had been in CSI for 11 years prior to me arriving, and turnaround before that. The largest category, our largest TSI category, happened to have been English language learners. And we were out of TSI within 2 years, and we got out of CSI after 3 years. I learned a lot about working with English language learners. I myself am an English language learner, so I was 5 years old when I learned to speak English, and I failed the TOEFL test when I came to the University of Utah the first time I took the test. We had a large population of kids that whose parents were very savvy from Eastern Africa, and they refused to be considered English language learners. So I get all the politics. We were 100% free and reduced lunch, 67% identified as English language learners. I happen to have worked with Paula Logan at Midvale Middle School for a year. The English language learners at Meadowlark were quite different than at Midvale, and I think it's important to understand that they're not all the same. At Midvale, it was probably half Hispanic, and a child could spend the entire day socializing and have a great circle of friends and never speak any English because there was plenty of people to speak Spanish. At Meadowlark, we had 27 different languages, much more difficult to spend the day in your own language. So anyway, I work in the Office for School Improvement. I'm a school improvement specialist, specifically working with CSI schools. But if you're ever interested in targeting the English language populations, I'd be happy to help you with that and tell you what I learned from my experience at Meadowlark.
Yeah, thanks, Maggie. We might want to think about doing that as a general session in October. I think, the experience of being in a situation, I think there are over 200 or 300 schools in TSI for the category of EL. Usually we say multilingual learners because, as you pointed out, Maggie, when I teach at Utah International Charter School, most of the students know 3 or 4 languages, right? The fact that they don't know English currently doesn't mean that they don't have assets to share with the rest of us who are monolingual. So thank you, Maggie, for that. And I also see Susie Estrada. So Susie, and just to let you know, we're not related, maybe distantly, in Mexico or Spain or the Andes or something like that. So Susie, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Susie Estrada. I started with USBE in December, and I am the Family and Community Engagement Specialist. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of different projects. Some quick background, I have been in K through 12. I taught preschool. I've done some help with ELL coordination. But a lot of my experience has also been with nonprofits, specifically in youth development. So youth programs, after school, and summer programs. So that's where the community engagement piece comes in. I have a lot of experience in that area. And I am excited and grateful to be here with you all.
Thanks so much, Susie. I think we also have Megan. So I'll have her introduce herself, and she'll do a really important section in relationship to changes in WIDA after our initial work that we're doing here. So Megan.
Yeah, thanks so much, Christelle. I'm super excited to be here. I am Megan Lopez. I am one of the WIDA assessment specialists here. Real quick, little bit of background. I just started as of July. I have now entered my 20th year in education. And it's so much fun getting to this, I feel like this is a big moment for me. I have pretty much since my second year been working with our ML students in Utah. I am actually also first generation in the United States from my father's side, immigrating from China, actually. So, a lot of fun language experiences there. And I'm just thrilled to be here with this group. And I cannot say thank you enough for all the questions that you always bring to me and just allow me the opportunity to engage with you and partner with you and just support your students, our students in your LEAs. So thanks. I'm sure I'll have a lot more information for you real soon.
Thanks, Megan. And someone just joined and their microphone is still on. So if everybody could make sure they're muted, which would be important because it ends up giving us feedback. Is there anybody else here from USBE that hasn't introduced himself or herself?
Hi, Christelle. I jumped on a little late. Is it okay? You want me just to introduce myself?
Yeah, just introduce yourself. That would be a good thing.
Thank you so much, Christelle. Tracy Van Deventer, Director of the Center for Continuous School Improvement, and our work is to support ATSI schools, CSI schools, and then continue on with other projects, including A2A+, which has been focusing on supporting those ATSI schools for multilingual learners. But we're thrilled to be here and love the work Christelle and you are all doing and want to continue that partnership. Thank you.
And I haven't introduced myself either. I'm James Martin, also from the Center for Continuous School Improvement at USBE. I work with the TSI schools in the state, and I'm excited, ATSI and ATSI, I'm excited to be here. Thanks.
So thanks everybody from USBE supporting this really important work. So I'm just going to say one thing about funding, and then I'm going to, the agenda is that we're actually going to really focus on two amazing promising practices, and this is about competency based. And that will be Tooele. They'll talk about, has been their first year in competency based, and there, if you're interested in that, there's a real clear criteria and lots of examples. Kind of the superstar of competency based, because of her stamina of dealing with me for a year or two at the U, is Lindsay, and Lindsay is here from Monticello. The work that she's done has been kind of the Lindsay, do you want to say when you started your program? Was it 6 years ago? I can't remember.
I think it was 6 years ago now, which is unreal, but yeah.
Yeah, so this is amazing. 7 years ago, I got permission from the USBE leadership, even before competency based was a thing, to actually develop a cohort at the University of Utah to design a competency-based program in relationship to adult learning needs and the goals that they set for themselves, as well as the work that they do specifically with students and student setting goals as well. So the way in which Lindsay developed that program has been kind of the highlight of everyone's work related to their variations in the way in which they design their programs based on their resources. So it's taking this example of adult learning as personalized and then saying, here are all the approaches that you can use, and based on your work and your resources. So we have many charter schools now who have competency-based. We have many districts who have. And so we're going to actually start off with Tooele. I think it's their first year. And then we'll do Ellie Gallagher and Eric about what they've learned. Because I think, Ellie, is this your third year? I don't remember.
Yes, we're starting our third year.
Okay, so you'll have some examples of, like, you know, the first year and what Tooele is doing, and then the third year. And if you want a six-year example, you know, we can actually, you know, end up doing a different session with other people who have had these amazing experiences with a competency-based ESL endorsement approach, which ends up being hybrid and whatever it is designed. If you're interested in that, all you have to do is email me and I'll send you the criteria to get your program approved, and also access to all the courses that were developed for SUU, so you can actually put them on your Canvas system. So we'll be doing that. The other thing I want to say about Tooele before they take over is Tooele is doing amazing programs in relationship to the Goshute language and maintaining the revitalization of Goshute, which we should all be incredibly proud of. San Juan also has gotten a federal grant in relationship to Navajo. So we have Goshute and we have Navajo that are going to be revitalized in Utah. And students will be able to actually then attain the biliteracy seal in relationship to oral language. So that piece is really important. A lot of our refugee students as well, with districts, the oral language in relationship to African languages and Asian languages is really important. A student that I've worked with for 4 years at East High School in independent study, he knows 4 languages and just ended up getting last year a 6 in WIDA. So he knows 5 languages. So these are great examples of Utah being innovative in a way that other places aren't, and we should be proud of that. So that's Tooele. Wasatch, I don't know if you saw the Salt Lake Trib, but they did a whole profile on the work that Wasatch did. It's one of the few districts probably in the country that didn't have significant losses during the pandemic. And if you want to know more about that, you should either email me and we could have a separate session about that, as well as Eric's work, now Dr. Campbell, finishing his PhD on the work that they have done with ensuring that literacy in the first language in DLI Spanish is the key for students learning and becoming proficient in English, which I think most of us know the research that if you're literate in your first language, it's much easier than to become literate in multiple other languages. So I'm going to hand it over to Stephanie, and then we'll go, and I'll monitor the chat as well. And then Ellie and Eric, they'll do their kind of presentation. And then we'll do a couple of other things before we go to Megan. And then I'll just stay on. And if you have any questions, and you want further conversation, I'm really open to that. Okay, so Stephanie.
All right, thank you. I'm the Federal Programs Director for Tooele County School District. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now so that we can look at the presentation. I do better when I have a PowerPoint. It kind of helps guide me. I'd also like to introduce Christiana. So she's in the same room, but you should see a video of her if you want to just do a quick hi.
Hello, glad to be here. I'm Christiana Allen. I'm one of the multilingual learner specialists in Tooele County School District.
All right, so I asked her to come and help us, or help me at the end of this presentation. I was able to attend some of the capstone projects, which really honestly is the culminating part of our whole entire program. The sweat, the tears, the hard work that everyone put in, and then to finally get to the point where we are seeing teachers basically saying and witnessing how the content that they learning about the TESOL standards, the WIDA language standards, and all the pieces put together within those domains help them overall in their teaching practice. And that right there was what sealed the deal for all of us on our team. And so we're going to be talking about that today. But at the very beginning part of this, so if you're welcome to look at the slideshow as I'm trying to see if it'll go to the next slide. Just a little bit of background for Tooele County School District. The last 5 years, we have seen a drastic increase of our ML students. I think that is not new information for any of you also within your districts, but it definitely was a culture shock for Tooele County School District. Although we are only 30 minutes from Salt Lake City, we have had a small community for many years, and to have the sudden increase of our diverse populations with languages and newcomer students coming from out of country, our system in and of itself was not prepared to be able to take on that load and to provide the services and supports that needed to happen. And so the support of Christelle Estrada a couple years ago, her gentle nudging and patience with us and helping us through this process, we finally were able to submit a proposal to her to say, hey, this is important to our district. This is our vision. This is our mission. This is what we know to be the best for our teachers to become qualified and supported in teaching their students inside of their classroom. And so last year was our first year with this competency-based program. So we're putting what we were saying now into practice, and Christiana's probably nodding over here, like it was hard. It was really hard, and we had a lot sign up, and we also had a lot drop out. And we received a lot of feedback, some of which were surprising, but not surprising, in that they would say, well, we didn't know that there was actually going to be work involved in this program. And we had to really internalize that feedback and say, hey, yeah, this program is going to take work, and that work is going to benefit you. And so we did successfully have 38 teachers complete the ASL endorsement program last year. And we were just super happy. And now we started a second year and hoping that we'll learn from last year. But in Tooele County School District, we do have 10 secondary schools and 16 elementary schools. Our specialists, there was another slide, I don't know where it went. Oh, there it is, it skipped it. We have 7 ML specialists. Basically, their roles in our district is to be instructional coaches in the world of ML. And so they're assigned to schools, secondary, elementary, and their primary role is to provide that support and building the capacity within our schools to be able to support their students. And so you can see our team right now and that division. If I'll leave this on this screen for just a little bit, if you are interested, you have access to our syllabus is what we're calling it, but it's basically the framework for our whole entire program. Here I did do a screenshot of our objectives and our scope and purpose and what that proficiency focus is going to be. And everything that we do, anything within our Canvas courses or in-person classes, our instructional coaching, everything is geared towards meeting this mission, this vision that we have. And so this document's about 8 pages long, and I have to be very honest here. We did not create all the verbiage ourselves. We definitely borrowed from Christelle. We also use this resource as how do I say that? A springboard. And it really helped us. We did have to pay a little bit of money, but it taught us as we were diving into this at the very beginning, thinking, how in the world are we going to get this accomplished? I mean, this is way bigger than we even thought when we started, but it did outline parts of the program. If you're creating basically TESOL standards program, which is exactly what the competency-based program is about. It tells you, it teaches you what considerations you need to have, what needs to happen, and building on the TESOL standards. And so that was really helpful as well. And so you will see that within our overview framework that I shared earlier. These are the 3 books that we chose as key and pivotal as part of this program. There are many books out there that we could have chosen, but these are the ones that we felt that we could bring in the WIDA language. You do have the free electronic version, but in our district, we chose to purchase those for the teachers because we're actively opening the books and marking in them and teaching teachers how to use those standards within their instructional practices. And so so if you have any questions on using these, if you guys have any other books, that's something for us to consider. We are not right now currently a SIOP certified, but we are working towards that direction. And when that happens, which hopefully will be soon, that book will be also introduced into this. So at the very beginning, before teachers even start, we do like a meeting to say, this is what you're going to be doing within this program. And so that they can really consider, okay, am I really wanting to do this? Maybe not. We talk about what does it mean to be competency-based. We talk about to have this program be competency-based. We talk about our Canvas courses, how many in-person classes, all of that is outlined also in that framework that I shared. And being able to implement that knowledge and learning within their own classroom. And so at the end, we call it our practicum, but that's also putting into practice the professionalism and the family engagement. But it happens throughout the whole entire school year. And it's all embedded within our courses, our in-person classes, instructional coaching anyway. But our program is 14 months. Christelle, when we first submitted ours, we said 12 months. It just wasn't realistic for us to be able to do 12 months. Our teachers were asking for more time. They were asking for some more support. So we've increased it to 14 months. We did share with them that this is the criteria. At this point, we really needed our teachers to be licensed because when they're in that beginning first 3 years, they have so much happening. Although we want our teachers at the beginning 3 years when they're in that provisional area, a lot of them are taking classes or they're also doing other requirements. And so we did have some teachers that were said, I'm a new teacher, but I really want to do this. And so we just made sure that we checked on what other load they had, workload, to make sure that this was doable for them. And so we shared that with them. But we talked about our #1 focus, being able to support our educators We will be teaching the TESOL domains, WIDA, Can-Do philosophy and language standards, and it's all based upon this instructional coaching model. Here you can see our courses. So course 1, our ML Foundations, that really is just the precursor to going into our TESOL domains. And really what we wanted to have happen here is for our teachers to learn about what WIDA is, to learn about elevations, because our district uses elevation and the educator strategies platform. We wanted them to understand the federal and state legal aspects, the regulatory pieces, and all the parts that happen kind of in the background, but are really critical for being able to have an ML Title III program. Then we move into the TESOL domains, language, culture. That happens in the summertime. And then all of it is self-paced until they hit culture, which halfway through July, it changes from, or it starts in July, but halfway through August, when teachers are back in on contract and starting to teach, it changes from self-paced to now we're working on physical, like assignments, observations, and then coaching feedback cycles. And so then it's not self-paced anymore. The main bulk of the whole entire school year falls within instructional strategies. You can see there that we have from September all the way through the end of January, and then we go into assessments focusing. We do cover all the standards within that assessment theory, assessment practices, but our district really chose formative assessments for ML students within that classroom as the key component. Our observation tool we use, Christelle's, that was a model for us with the observation tool that she uses when she does her monitoring visits. That was a key component of all of our observations and instructional coaching cycles. And so, but we have multiple copies of like how we adapted those instructional, those observation sheets. And we're more than willing to share with anyone who is interested and is kind of at that point, because we realized how important that piece was. And we had to break it down into parts for our teachers. And then you can see the practicum. Yes, it happens supposedly April, May, but it's all embedded within all of the courses. So the family engagement component I will talk about in just a little bit. And then our capstone project. So in total, 18 total credits within Midas. And then this part I've already kind of talked to you about on this slide, but that's within that framework syllabus but you can see more of the verbiage and the breakdown of our program. Orientation, Canvas courses, in-person sessions, instructional coaching cycles, using the domains, capstone project, and then putting in the application at the end of the program, making sure that they follow through with the end steps to make sure they get that endorsement attached to their license, their teaching license. So we use Canvas. We did have a teacher who during our program last year and then near the end said very kindly, but it said that there are teachers who have needs that we needed to differentiate more specifically for those needs. And we really took that to heart and realized that what he was saying was truly needed. And so he helped us, not sure why that jumped, but he helped us. He has some incredible talents and some programming skills within Canvas that I had no idea existed. And so within our courses right now, we've embedded a lot of components that help our neurodivergent teachers and supporting even our teachers that have that English is their second language, to help them really connect to the parts. So we're more than happy to share that. I didn't want to spend too much time, but I just want to show you that, we are taking that extra dive into going deep in how the Canvas courses are structured and how they look and how the teachers can access that content. But we have our modules. You can see that in the beginning of every course, we do a self-assessment, a pre-self-assessment, and then a post-self-assessment within those standards. And so they rate themselves and then they create goals. At the end of the course, they take the same self-assessment with those TESOL standards and then they write a reflection. So we make sure that we're always tying it back to those domains. We use as the learning components, we use videos, reading, we have reflections for our teachers. We use activities within that, and then discussions. I really love the discussions. That's one of my favorite parts of it. Really building in that Socratic piece where teachers are learning from each other. And then in each of the courses, absolutely the coaching components. Two main projects, family engagement project, it's twofold. We have a classroom focus, so the teachers focus and create some goals or some action plans that are classroom specific. And that they kind of do on their own to meet the needs of their students. But the other component of the family engagement project is school-wide. And that's where we encourage them to work in groups, work with other teachers that's in the program at their school, or maybe close schools that are close by. And that's where we saw some amazing things happen on the school level, and bringing in that professionalism aspect where they're sharing their knowledge and then having the other teachers kind of jump in with their projects. And so that is throughout the whole entire school year as they build that. And then finally, the culminating capstone project. We left this very open. We wanted them to figure out what was the best way for them to share, what modality it was for them to share with us their whole entire journey. And so with that, there are 3 of them that we wanted to showcase. Christelle, do we have about 10, 12, 13 minutes still? Okay. Christiana is going to share the first 2, and then I'll end with the last one. So Christiana, can you see that? And
Yes.
is everyone able to hear her?
Hello, hello. Is it okay? Thanks, Christelle.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'll come over closer.
Yeah, she can come closer.
Okay, so the first one we're going to showcase is a teacher named Janine Gilliard. She was a 5th grade teacher at Middle Canyon Elementary. She has a great strength in being very artistic. And so where we left it very open-ended as to what the teachers could do, of course, we got a lot of PowerPoints. And they were all wonderful, but she made this running banner of everything that she had learned. And so you can see she starts here with her why of how can I teach my multilingual and struggling students more effectively. We really tried to help teachers focus on the fact that this isn't just these concepts and strategies don't just help our language learners, they also help our struggling students, and so that they'll kind of embrace it a little bit more. And so we wanted them to prove competency in each of the different TESOL standards. And you can see that she's kind of utilizing all the different standards there and some of the strategies that she used in the classroom to help her language learners be more successful. And this is, I don't know how many feet it was, maybe 20 feet long. The poster is just absolutely beautiful, and she was kind enough to let us hang on to it and take some great pictures of it. She also shares the multicultural festival that the school did, and that was their family engagement project. There, she had other teachers at the same school that were going through the endorsement at the same time, so they were able to do a school-wide thing. Unfortunately, it did embrace Christmas, so you know, that's something we need to work on. If the culture is not a holiday, that at least they did something that got the families involved. And I took my daughter there with me that evening, and she said, "Mom, I've never in Utah, and Tooele, Utah especially, heard so many languages in one place." And so that was an exciting, just, you know, validating that we did get those parents out and involved in the community and the school environment. And our next one was a wonderful junior high teacher. Was she high school?
Oh, it is.
I always forget.
It is high school, yeah.
She's high school language arts, Lisa Meekum. And she was actually kind of, you know how you have some difficult teachers to work with. She's very demanding. She wants an answer right away. We were kind of worried at the get-go, and we kind of tag teamed her as far as coaching, but she just came out having learned so much, and she created this really great newsletter that she shared. She really got involved in her students' lives and in their cultures, and really made some great connections with the students. She's still a difficult teacher to work with, but boy, we have a really good appreciation for her now, and she's one of our ELD class teachers at this point.
I wanted to highlight one sentence that when she first started, I couldn't stop laughing. Right here where it says those intrepid teachers who were willing to be guinea pigs for the inaugural program gathered their materials. Oh my goodness. So you can definitely hear her voice, but
And yes, they were intrepid guinea pigs. And this teacher has never before kind of dove into her language learners and really invested time in learning about them. And so it was really validating to see that she made those connections. And even though maybe sometimes she went about things a little strangely, she did bring those elements to her classroom that were necessary to help her language learners be more successful, and really just did an amazing job of teaching her newcomers at the same time that she was teaching her long-term English learners as well.
yeah. And then the final one, I don't really have to say too much because just because this is recorded, Erica Campman really does not feel comfortable having this being shared without her permission. And so she did give permission for me to share this. And if you're going to use this as an example for in your district, just let us know so I can let her know, because she put in a lot of work within this video that she created. And I just wanted to preface that with this video. We're going to watch the first 7 minutes, and then we're going to jump to the last 3 minutes, and then that will be finished with our portion of this. But it's incredible, and so we just want to show you this video. So I'm going to go ahead and
to present my capstone project for the ESL endorsement. The goal of this session is to share with you everything that I've learned throughout this course. So I really hope you enjoy my presentation.
I'm going to pause really quick. I forgot to mention she works out in Wendover, Anna Smith Elementary. So Wendover is one of our rural schools. We have, even though we're at about 70% that are our ML students, the Hispanic population, we have more, some of them that aren't considered English learner, but they are English learners. And so the most of the school has students that are considered ML. And so now I'll resume.
So come with me and let's begin. When I think about teaching language to my ML students, I don't only think about ELA. If I teach math, I have to teach them the mathematical terms. If I reinforce science, I have to teach them the scientific vocabulary. And I usually try to use Spanish cognates so students can make connections with the knowledge acquired in the Spanish class. This way, students will develop their language skills through rich content in all areas. Providing multiple opportunities for our students to collaborate is crucial, especially when we're talking about substantial learners and reluctant speakers. They need to have that opportunity to express their thoughts, and most importantly, they need to feel safe. So we need to create a safe environment for them to participate, to talk. And another important point is the students, they are substantial and reluctant speakers. We need to provide them with sentence frames, word banks, anchor charts, because a lot of times they know the answer, but they don't know how to express their thoughts. They don't know how to convey that message in English. In my classroom, we have goals for everything, from classroom behavior to reading fluency, comprehension skills, math goals, assessment goals, because I truly believe that giving students an opportunity to establish their own short-term or long-term goals helps to increasing students' motivation towards learning?
The benefits of having goals are like it pressures you to do better, to like you have that goal in your head to like focus better and do things better. You're like, I have to do this, or there are so much to do.
During one of the observations, I received a constructive feedback that I had to slow down and give students more time to process their thoughts. I reflected about it and decided to make a change. It was like, I'm gonna face myself and increase the wait time. And that has made a tremendous change to my teaching. I noticed that students seem to feel more comfortable to volunteer to answer questions, no matter if their answers are correct or not. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever tried to learn a new language? If you said yes, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes people ask you a question and you know the answer for that question, language 1, but you don't know how to answer that question, language 2. That's very frustrating. So that happens to our ML learners all the time. That's why it's very important to give them like extra time to think and provide them with a variety of scaffolds to help them convey a message in English. This process of acquiring a new language and speaking in language 2 doesn't come as natural for ML students as it comes for native speakers. We always ask our students to listen with attention, but we don't explore this ability very much in our teaching. Obviously, our focus is in reading and writing, but speaking and listening are very important while learning a new language. However, one of the hardest ones to master. Our ML learners, they bring a huge amount of assets with them. And all we have to do is devote some time to getting to know our students and learn more about their personal experiences and their home experiences and use that in our advantage. We cannot assume they have no knowledge just because our goal is to fill them in with knowledge in English. Their rich in knowledge and their experiences are very valuable. Our student community is based on ML students. At ALS Meeting Elementary, our school mission is to inspire a culture that inspires a love of learning in all students. Teachers value Hispanic culture, and the Hispanic culture is present in our school. We are a DLR school, and we wanted to empower our students through bilingual education, and we wanted to celebrate the diversity of our students and staff in our school. The benefits of being bilingual, there is list, but I think the main reasons would be better workplaces, more opportunities in general, and the more people you get. The benefits of being bilingual are that you get more opportunities and you can talk to other people. Most of the countries in the world speak when listen. The benefits of being bilingual is you can understand people more and connect with them, and also you can get job benefits and more opportunities. I used a few activities at the beginning of the school year to learn more about my students, such as circle activities to get to know about their names, how they would like to be called. Then when I greet them in the morning, I will pronounce their names correctly and help to preserve their names.
All right, now I'm gonna go ahead and just jump to the very end and then we will finish. Maybe. It's thinking.
Not the right time for technical difficulties.
All right, so it might not pull up, but she does share how grateful and glad that she was to be able to do this program, and that it really had impacted her teaching, her beliefs, and enabled her. Let's just see if.
It was definitely a long journey, but there's a lot to celebrate. This year, I had the opportunity to explore different pathways of my teaching, and the ESL endorsement has definitely helped me to innovate my teaching. I learned new strategies to support my MLs more effectively, and that's exactly what I was looking for when I first started. When I first signed up for this course, my department teacher and I, we wanted to take this course together so we could learn and grow together. But unfortunately, the ESL endorsement was only offered for English teachers. Even though she couldn't take the course with me, I shared with her all the amazing things I've learned throughout this course. And I also share with other teachers during our PLCs because it made me feel excited that all the new things that I've learned and strategies that I was implementing with my students in my classroom. And I felt like everyone else should be trying them. I'm passionate about teaching, and the two modules that I enjoy the most were instruction and language. I love to teach language and learn new languages myself. So it was amazing to learn different approaches to teaching multilingual learners. In the module of instruction, I really like it because that's when we are in action. So I felt very motivated to research new strategies because my focus was to teach my students how to have academic conversations. That's when I found the progression of talk and I decided to try. I have to confess that I was out of my comfort zone, but I was feeling determined to try a new thing with them and see if it would work or not, and it actually did. So overall, I can say that I've grown tremendously with this course. I've learned so much. I tried so many different things. I reflected a lot about my teaching and tweaked things when necessary. So I believe that I'm feeling very comfortable on how to assist my multilingual learners. And I will continue to use all this knowledge in future years and share with as many teachers as I can.
All right, any ending thoughts, Christiana? She was in the depths of in the trenches for sure. So
it was very, I mean, it's been intense. It's been really hard to implement this and to get things going. It's been a lot of work. But those, even though it wasn't a huge number of teachers that have gone through it, we're building that capacity little by little. And I think it's been really effective with the teachers who have completed the ESL endorsement. We've seen a change in their teaching and their approach to students and an awareness of our multilingual students. And they're helping to spread that to others. And hopefully we'll continue that with this year's cohort and moving through next year. So maybe one day we'll get it required by our district.
Yep. Thanks, Christelle, for letting us share.
Well, thank you, Stephanie and Christiane. Do you have any questions for Tooele? You can just don't put it in the chat because I don't want to really read the chat. If you just want to speak out, and if you have any questions or comments, it would be really valuable.
If you don't mind, I have a question, and it's regarding other districts we work with that sometimes question how to best support their teachers in getting these endorsements. And we want to encourage them to consider this because I think this is really impactful for those educators. What would be the advice you would give me when I'm just traveling around to say, consider this? How do you feel that you could encourage or convince them to think about it?
Specifically on like a district level or for students to consider?
No. Well, just how it served you and your teachers and of course your students.
Yeah, on a administrative level, I think right now where we struggle is that teachers or even admin think that this is a separate piece. And so even from the state to emphasize, this is really the key piece to this is the number one priority that districts need to prioritize for their teachers, because that is in essence what needs to happen in the classroom. It's not about pull-out services. It is all about the teacher and the students and the relationships that we're building. And And so the communication on the state level of how important it is. My work that I'm doing with the leadership, her work that she's doing within her schools, so she talks with the administrators. I just, it's a huge question. I asked that too, because it's still, we had less teachers that applied this year, and we just think that's a travesty. So do you have any ideas on that one? Or I don't know.
I think just encouraging teachers to recognize, like, good teaching, it's good, strong teaching. And if you want to extend your skills, if you want to be even better within the parameters of your job, I mean, these courses, like, I feel like don't just make you a better teacher, they make you a better human. Being aware of the cultural diversity and recognizing how to be respectful of that, it just creates a better community overall.
Right. So I'm not sure if that completely answers your question, but we are working really hard on that campaign. It feels like a campaign. We're trying to advertise. It's constant all the time. And we say the same things over and over again, but you know, it helps if from on the top saying, hey, you've really gotta move in this direction. We do have districts that mandate teachers to get their ESL endorsement. Our district, I'd be curious, we don't have a mandate. And so I think it should be a mandate, right? Law, but anyway, sorry, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, so
Well,
let
kudos. Thank you.
Yeah, just let me say one thing. So Robin from Murray said amen. And we have another perspective from Wasatch. And we also have, of course, Lindsay here, who's been doing it. They've been doing it for 6 years. So they actually have the longest. So I'm just going to kind of go around the horn for other responses to Tracy. And just so you know, there are probably 11 districts and so many charters now that have designed a competency-based ESL endorsement where authentic adult learning. So this is what makes it different from sit and get and training weird stuff that happens that teachers resent because they're treated like infants, right? It's very paternalistic. So this is about really building the capacity of the teacher to be a professional and focus on their own learning as an adult in relationship to the impact they have on students. That's why it's different than any other kind of professional learning or development that is mandated by people who are not in the classroom. I mean, I don't know how much clearer I can be with that. So maybe Ellie, Eric, and Lindsay and Robin, because they've all, really worked hard to develop a competency-based program. And I know Ogden has one too, and so you would actually be surprised at the transforming experience of people taking adult learning seriously and not being paternalistic or maternalistic or whatever that word is. I don't know. So Robin, Eric, Ellie, Lindsay, anybody want to add to help Tracy better understand the way in which this is being upscaled?
So my amen was just really tying to building the efficacy of classroom teachers and having all hands on deck and not just a pull-out program where teachers continue with the path that they've always had, knowing that full well that it's not working for kids. And I do think that as our teachers go through these programs, they have more investment. Like they start to spread that to their peers. It's a better PLC, it's a better PD, it's all of that spreads out. And so I would echo many of the things that Steph and Partners for Tula said, in that being frustrated, because I do feel like sometimes this priority gets pushed to the side for bigger priorities. And yet, to me, that teaching practice every single day in the classroom is so critical to the success of any of our learners, and especially our ESL learners and our struggling learners as well, that it's our backyard, it's our classroom, it's ours. It's not somebody else's problem. And, I continually ask faculty and administrators when they want another person added, like they want another ESL para added, or they want some other kind of intervention. My question is, to what end? Like, I actually am one of the huge converts of elevations, but elevations is only as good as every single teacher and practitioner involved in that child's life is interfacing with that. So I will buy a $50,000 program, but I want to know what's the end game with that. And just really echoing, it's about the capacity of our teachers and having them own that.
Thanks, Robin. I think Eric wanted to say something as well.
Oh, yeah, just one of the things that I found when we talk about at Wasatch, we thought about kind of pushing that button of, should we make all our teachers, especially because all of our schools here are dual language immersion Spanish, do we make that English side do it? But I have been a convert in the work, and certainly the support from you, Christelle, and the work that Lindsay's done in teaching us, and everything that Ellie's been doing here. I am a convert to the power of it being teacher driven based on their data. Has been really incredible to me to see how those teachers have really invested in the learning and have taken it on themselves. And I love what you guys said about a campaign. It really is a campaign. But our teachers that have gone through the program have been the greatest strength in really pushing that campaign. One of the things that we're going to be doing, since we've now have 2 years in, is we'll be inviting some of those teachers that presented their projects to our admin meetings, and they will do some of those presentations there to kind of catch on to that fire that they have, because it was all driven by themselves and them kind of feeling this frustration that they're not doing better with their students, and that has caught on. Again, we don't have as many people signed up this year as we hope, but we realize that's kind of maybe we can do a better job of getting their stories out and giving them more face time with their colleagues, because after listening to them, you're converted for sure. It's like, sign me up, let's go do this. So I'm just speaking from me being a convert of being maybe a top-down thinker to, oh no, this needs to be bottom up and top down supported, and that's what we're finding will be the greatest success for our students and the teachers involved, is my perspective. So, for whatever it's worth.
So Ellie or Lindsay, do you want to say anything?
I totally agree with Eric. I think that has been the most powerful way to get people interested and involved, is by having the teachers who've gone through the truly transformative process of this program to talk about it, because they have to be so vulnerable. And I think that's the part that nobody really understands until you're going through it. You have to be vulnerable with your own misconceptions and your own bias that every single person has before you can really move towards improvement for your students and your school culture. And it's such a soft skill, and it's something that can't be measured, which makes it really hard for people to, latch onto. But that truly is the best way that I have been able to get teachers every single year involved, and every single year through the program. And as a small school, it has changed the way we have those conversations, and it's changed the perceptions. And when I see new people come in that have these perceptions about our ML students, it's very quickly not refuted, but they start to come around to, oh, okay, I see, this is the way we do this here, this is the way we talk about this here, this is the way we have these can-do attitudes, instead of going towards what's the silver bullet, what's the magic answer, because we all know there is no magic answer or silver bullet. It's all about people. So I think that is so important, and just thank you guys all for the work that you're doing.
Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to actually go so the thing that's interesting is, of course, Lindsay, I don't know, you can actually tell that she's actually been doing this for 6 years, I think. I'm not going to tell you about, how I terrified her when she was working with me 6 years ago at the U. because it was a very individualized kind of tutorial way in which learners together better understand the context of each individual school, whether it's an LEA, a single LEA, or whether it's a district, right? I mean, that's really the point. So I think maybe Ellie and Eric, do you want to say anything else about, so you've now done this for 3 years and what you've actually learned and adjusted. And that's the other point that's really important to understand, is that based on feedback from the people who were the participants, just like in the classroom, you end up making adjustments. Like Stephanie talked about, you know, the student who really focused on the neurodiversity of the adult learner, as well as, you know, students in the program who are teachers and have a background as a second language learner or a third language learner. So the whole idea is the way in which LEA resources are designed to be responsive to the needs of the adult learner. Because what are we modeling? We're modeling that every teacher is a learner and they're responding, right, to their students in relationship to how they adjust what they're actually doing. So we're actually modeling what we would like to see happen in the classroom. That's why Lindsay's talking about relationships, right? So Ellie and Eric, you want to say what you've actually learned?
I would love to, because when we started this program, Lindsay was our greatest resource. I emailed her several times and she shared a lot of materials and we had all these conversations and, you know, you're like, okay, I got this. I'm going to go do it. And the first year it was incredible. It was everything that everyone has already said. So I don't need to go into it. But one thing I would say in a nutshell, if I were to run into a superintendent from another district, the first thing that I would say to them is, would you like to increase capacity in your school district so that every school has an expert on how to help multilingual learners? I've got the program for you. And that will leave a legacy in your district that will never go away, that no coursework alone could ever suffice. So that would be my little marketing nugget for it, to answer your question, Tracy. To discuss kind of some of the lessons learned, the joke in our district amongst the teachers and the coaches, they call it Ellie's MLM. And if you know what an MLM is, it's a multi-level marketing scheme. And it's a little joke. Everybody thinks it's funny. But basically what we've done is we are trying to increase capacity. So as Dr. Campbell said, every time a teacher goes through the program, we offer them the opportunity to then become a coach in the program. And then I take them under their wing and we kind of nurture that relationship so they become a coach. That process has gone well. I'd like to see it go even better. I think one of our biggest challenges, Dr. Campbell already said, was just keeping the numbers up, and Twila has seen it as well. Sometimes it just depends how many initiatives are happening in the district and what load is already on the teachers. So we take that into account. Other things that we've learned, we actually, because we have dual language immersion programs in every single school, we have encouraged teachers who teach the Spanish side or the English side to participate. And this last year, we had a presentation by one of our dual language immersion middle school teachers. Yes, she did a fabulous job because she linked what she was doing for ESL students who speak Spanish. The support she was giving them in L1 was carrying over into their performance in English. And we couldn't, you know, it was a correlation. Obviously, we didn't prove causation, but she saw a difference and the students saw a difference. So that is one thing that we are doing a little bit different in Wasatch. We are doing a lot of the things that Twila is doing. I will say that if you ask the teachers, sometimes they feel like it needs, this is a funny thing that they said. it was unstructured at times. And in the moment, they were like, oh, I want more structure. But then when they reflected at the end of the program, they realized that because it wasn't structured, they were able to really explore on their own and do what they needed to do. And as a result, almost all of them reflected that now I know where to go to find the tools and the resources when I have a question. They all said, we're not done. We haven't arrived. Just because that endorsement is on my certificate, I'm not done. And so even the coaches continue learning because they're still working as a cohort. I should tell you too that I have done some research on our program, and I have some narratives from the teachers. And so part of that process, we did reflect on the teachers' needs and what they found most helpful and what they thought needed to change. Another piece that they found very helpful, and I was very surprised, but Dr. Campbell was very happy, was our cohort. Getting together, using some of the SRI documents. If you're not familiar with that, Christelle can share it with you. It's a really helpful site. It has some protocols for managing the discussions with adult learners. Every single teacher who has gone through our program has said that that was the most valuable piece, was working with their colleagues and getting feedback from their colleagues and troubleshooting. And that's also research-based. So we've kept all those things. We are not adding more structure. Even though they thought they wanted it, they all said they didn't. So that's not something we'll be doing. But what we will be doing is supporting our coaches more. We have found that some of our coaches have been stronger than others. So I think we need to have some consistency amongst our coaches. So Twila, I'd love to see some of your data sheets. We have some too. So in a nutshell, I had pulled up a bunch of documents, but Twila kind of went over the program. Ours looks slightly different, but very similar. And you are welcome to see some of our teacher presentations. Ours are a little bit different in that they have to do cycles of action research, basically. And they do several of those throughout the year. And then at the end of the year, they really make an argument about, why am I now prepared to teach multilingual learners? And so if you want to see our presentations, I know Christelle has a private YouTube link that you could see those. And then if you're interested in any of our documentation, I am also happy to share the unpublished paper that I wrote if you want to look at that. Any of the paper, by the way, has narratives from our teachers about their experiences. If you want to see any of our tools, I'm happy to share. So I was trying to be quick.
So if you send all that to me, then we can upload it to our playlist, which is called Supporting Students Learning English. It has all of our videos, all of our best practices. And Robin is saying, Wasatch helped Murray get our program started by leading the way in competency programs. And Robin is saying, thank you. And that's, so it's a really, see, this is the goal. It's about how do adult learners learn in a way that they create a community to disseminate and upscale practices that make a significant difference for students learning. I can't even say it in a clear way. I mean, that's really the point about respecting the adult learner and learning from each other. The fact that this started 6 years ago with Lindsay suffering through me, and, you know, from our emergent learning and actually experiencing this. And so we have people saying, ditto, this is really important, because respecting the adult learner and treating them in developing a relationship and honoring what they bring to the table and how you support them in learning is what we want to see in every Utah classroom. That's what we want to see, right? And people adjusting and then telling the participants, whether they're students in the first or second grade or high school students, how you've actually adjusted what you're doing because you've learned from the learners what's making a difference for them. I mean, that's really the point. So I don't know, Eric, do you want to say anything else, or anyone else, or Stephanie, or anybody else before we go on to the next topic?
Christelle, I want to add just a little side note there. I really appreciate all the comments, because we're right there too. We are feeling that journey that you have felt in the past, and what we shared today was definitely, it looks very structured, but I wanted to piggyback off of Ellie, what you said, that within our, like, we have the self-paced courses, but within instruction assessment, we have 12 cycles of mini action research pieces. And I didn't bring that up. I should have, because we really wanted the teachers to just, we gave them a base foundation, such as like academic conversations. Here are some really key pieces. Now you go out and find what is going to work in your classroom, and the teachers were doing that. And I have to echo what Ellie says there, that action research piece, and them building their goals and then telling us how it worked for them. That was key. And that is a major portion of our program, and far less structure than the very beginning. So thank you for bringing that up and reminded me. I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I think the big thing is, in most of the courses that I designed 7 or 8 years ago, whatever, start out with the self-assessment, right? In a safe environment in which you can look into your own practice without other people making judgments about you. Right. So when you self-assess, then you identify, based on who your students are, what it is you need and how you set a goal. The school reform protocols, mostly everybody, I think, from every program, and they can use whatever protocol process they use, but it's really effective in PLCs, is the tuning protocol, where you actually bring something that the person considers a success, and then you use the protocol to tune up the conditions in the process so that you change what you're doing based on the feedback of colleagues in a safe learning environment for the adult. Same thing with, I think, Lindsay's group. At the very end, they do a success analysis protocol, which is a great exemplar of how you develop the collaborative skills. You know, when you're born, you don't come out with collaborative skills. It's usually survival skills, right? So the question ends up being, how, in fact, do you support teachers in PLC work to create these safe environments to be vulnerable in a way that you get the kind of feedback that makes a difference in your understanding of yourself as a teacher related to your efficacy with students. I mean, that's right. That's really the point. Okay, so any last thing before we go to Megan? Okay, the last thing I'm going to say, which will be for another time, we actually used a protocol, and Ellie's she's sharing files and other things in the chat, so you could also access that. This issue about students coming who are older, right? They've come from Afghanistan, they've come from the Ukraine, they've come from embattled Congo. I mean, we're really lucky. Most people don't, people's ideas of Utah are in some ways like really strange. They don't really understand that the way in which we welcome refugees challenges us in ways that nobody else pretty much in the United States is challenged. So that's why learning from each other is really important. So, and I'll give you an example, and Monty, if he's still here, he might want to say something. We actually took the competency-based legislation and then developed a process for a team meeting to assess the competencies of a student when they were enrolling in school, And also we're facing not graduating from high school because, quote unquote, they didn't have all the required subjects. So I'll just tell you the ending. So Monty and their team in Salt Lake ended up adapting the protocol that I sent to them. And I'll send this out to you when I send the link. They adapted the protocol so that when they met as a team at the high school with a student from Afghanistan, the last thing that was keeping her from graduating, you'll never believe this, after they used the protocol and competency-based legislation, was PE. Was the only thing that was keeping her from graduating, if you can imagine. And so one of the people on the team asked her, well, when you were in Afghanistan, did you have military training? And she said, oh, yes, every morning we spent. And so she explained, the rigorous military training they had done in Afghanistan. And so then the whole team agreed, well, actually, that's actually more rigorous than the PE requirement. And so here's the PE requirement. You're approved. And so she ended up graduating from high school. And so it's a very simple way not to be tied down to our assumptions about requirements. And competency-based is one way that you could actually better support registration and placement of students in coursework. So I don't know, Monty, do you want to say, I don't know if you're still here.
Yeah, sure. I'm still here. Yeah, it was a pretty cool process. And it took a team, and we had a high school administrator in there who knew a lot about transcripts and had done this with other students in the past. And she was the one that was able to ask all these very important questions that we could then take their evidence of what the student had done and use that for our requirements to graduate, right? And so those questions like asking about the military training and things like that were very integral. And another really cool thing that I can't remember where I read this or where it came from, but I think it was from you, Christelle, is we got to decide as a team whether we believed the student and family or not. They had no evidence because the Taliban had burned everything. And it was clear she was highly educated and came here as a senior. And as you guys know, that's a pretty big hurdle to overcome, right? And so it was a pretty cool process, a very collaborative process. And I learned a lot, and I look forward to being able to help some more students with it. It was really great.
Thanks, Monty. So also I'll send out that protocol and then a variation that we also got in relationship to super seniors, related to some policy related to the work that Angie Stallings in the legislature has done. Again, I'm going to say, people will be surprised at the kind of advocacy that happens in the state legislature based on collaborative work between Senator Johnson, or Representative Johnson, and Senator Thatcher, and the two bills that previously focused on language access. And we're trying to actually get funding for the language access policy, because as you know, you have to use state funds, not Title III or federal funds, because language access, and that you have a language access policy in place based on state legislation is more motivation to be funded. And so we're working on getting a comparative amount of money, because Title III, I know this sounds like for some people a lot of money, but generally it's not. When you look at our budget, we get about $5 million for Title III. And the first 5% comes off for immigrant students, which is focused on a formula for a significant increase. And this year, this goes to something that Tooele has said, the districts that actually received immigrant funding for a significant increase in immigrants who have not been in an educational system for 3 years is Alpine, Canyons, Granite, Jordan, and Provo. And I'm saying this because we have a lot to learn from these districts, but our tendency is not to do that, because we're still thinking of them like in the 1950s, like they don't have anybody who's diverse, and that's not true, just like Tooele is changing, right? So we actually have this amazing advantage of learning from each other based on the work that Canyons is doing with refugees, that Jordan is doing with high school, with principals, that Provo is the one who's done like really interesting work related to, working with administrators to actually have them braid resources in a way that builds the principal's capacity to use funds more effectively. And of course, the work that Alpine is doing with instructional coaches. So we have all these great examples, as well as Granite's approach to moving like in a pop-up environment for refugee support. And Dave has done a great job there. So we have all these amazing colleagues who are doing extraordinary work, and that's what we should learn. We should learn with them and from them and be proud of, what's happening in Utah. Okay, any other last comments before we go to Megan? So I actually asked Aaron Bruff to send me a data set, and then I'm going to send it out to all the LEAs. And the data set is all the students who actually received a composite 4.2, but aren't exited because they didn't get a 3.5 in speaking. Now, the reason people aren't getting 3.5 in speaking is because oftentimes they're being talked to death starting in the 4th grade because the content gets more intense. Okay, so I'm just saying that's not really helping. So when I send the data to you, you'll actually get the district total, and then by school, you'll actually get the students who would have exited, but their speaking scores didn't allow them to be exited. So this gives you a chance to really focus on teaching academic conversation and academic language in the content areas in your classrooms, and to use observation tools and coaching to help teachers better understand that. Okay, so that's coming to you as well. Okay, so Megan, do you want to share your screen? Thank you, Megan, for being. Megan has been this great asset in, the whole communications related to the change in composite. Because I'm a high school fanatic, my concern was counselors getting WIDA scores that didn't show they were going to be exited, right? And then programming them into really low-level classes, which I'm just saying to all of you, you have to work with your counselors and your registrars, because some of the things that are happening with kids being programmed, is really, actually a civil rights violation. You can't do undue segregation for students learning English, right? So think about that. Okay, Megan, take it away.
All right, let's get my screen up. And is everyone able to see my screen? Okay, I'm gonna also pop up the chat. All right, before I get started, I also want to kind of just to piggyback off of what Dr. Estrada was just saying. In the data that we have seen consistently from our WIDA access scores, we time and again every year see that our speaking scores are the lowest. And I know we've all had lots of conversations around this, but it definitely is, I think, also to be considered that we see still a lot of practices that say this is just the ESL teacher's job or the language arts teacher's job. But remember that the test is assessing academic English language, and that is the language of science, the language of mathematics, the language of English language arts, social sciences, and that is everybody's job. I, just like Christelle, kind of follow in her footsteps. I'm English language arts as well, and I'll be honest, I have zero business teaching students how to speak like a scientist, because that's not how I was trained. And so it really does take the work of every single educator, every content area, to allow these students the opportunity to learn and engage in those academic language conversations per their content. So, all right. Closing off my soapbox, let's get into it. Christelle, how much time would you like me to take?
Well, I think you need to take as much time as the questions warrant.
Okay.
So and Megan, are you going to look at the chat for the questions, or do you want them just to jump in or stop you, or like what's your preference?
I am fine with anything. I'm gonna just go with the flow and be flexible. So you guys you jump in, either raise a hand, come off mute, put it in the chat. And if I do miss hands or chats or anything, just interrupt me at any time. All right.
I'll check the chat as well.
Okay, thank you. All right. So first of all, happy beginning of the school year. It's so great to see so many familiar faces, but also I want to say a big welcome to all of you that are new in your position. I just want to say, be patient with yourself if you are new. It takes really a good full year plus to go through an entire cycle to really feel like, okay, I've got it. So if at any moment you have questions, you need someone to just walk you through anything, please contact myself or Ann Michelle Neal. We both oversee the WIDA assessments. And don't ever feel like you need to apologize. It's our job to support you, and we want to. So just reach out. So with that, assessing our multilingual learners, you will see the acronym ELP quite a lot. It's English Language Proficiency Assessments, and that's the term that we see in law. So here we go. The first thing I want to say is you're gonna hear this quite a bit. I'm putting a huge plug in for this. Communication. We do, the assessment department is really making a big effort, and we have a goal to really help LEAs build their communication practices and really make sure that the messaging is getting out to everyone that it needs to. So this is the first thing I want to cover. There is, we're calling it Building Assessment Connections. It's taking place September 28th. It is going to be all virtual, and we have asked that LEAs bring a team to the table, right? We want all of the people that assessment covers, and we want to help and create space for you to come up with appropriate communication plans to ensure that all the information gets to every department that it needs to in your LEA. Now, I know some of you are like, I am every department, because you wear about 10 hats, but let us know how we can support you during that time if you are that individual wearing so many hats, but also how can we help you come up with good ways to communicate. One thing that definitely Christelle and I felt as we've been messaging all of this out is, we tried to mass send out information about all these updates to all the different groups, special education directors, ALS directors, assessment directors, charter leadership, counseling. We hit so many, and we still got responses of, I heard this from another LEA. And so this is one of the reasons why we want to bring everyone together to really shore up those practices of, first, even just looking at our listservs. Do we have the right people? If you don't tell us changes are being made, we don't know. So especially in staff. And then, also just what can we do to make sure this is getting out to everyone? So Midas course 62710. All right. So let's get into WIDA. For some of you, this is going to be a refresher. And then for some of you, this will be new. Again, if you need more personalized guidance, just reach out and we're happy to meet with you anytime virtually. So you need to make sure that you are always communicating with the following people. We want you to make sure that assessment directors are in the loop. Every LEA is different when it comes to our WIDA assessments. Sometimes LEAs believe this lies within the assessment department's responsibilities, and then other LEAs say this lies within our Title III, ALS, language services departments. So really establishing who oversees what is crucial in this role. Also, technology coordinators. There's quite a few platforms that need to be installed on student devices and proctor machines. So please make sure technology coordinators are also involved in the communication. And then also building administrators. We see quite often building administrators not as much in the loop as they really could and should be. So make sure that they understand, what are your testing plans? Does the district take this on for them, the LEA, or is this something that they are responsible for making sure and implementing in their schools? So please make sure you're reaching out to your colleagues to have these discussions. And then of course I sent you the slides, so you should be able to have all of these links available to you. These are some resources that you will 100% want to bookmark and become familiar with. So we have the USBE WIDA assessment website. We have Christelle's USBE Title III website, and then we also have a WIDA website and a Utah specific page housed on WIDA's website. So just getting used to this is a very broad year in review. So we have our two assessments that we really focus on when it comes to WIDA. We have the screeners, and then we have our annual access. That's the annual English language proficiency assessment. The WIDA screeners, those are available all year long, because as students enroll into your LEAs in your schools, depending on their home language survey, students might have to be screened at any point during the year. All screening materials are free for you. If you're paying for something, please don't save that money for other things. The only time you might have to pay for something is if you want professionally printed, laminated things. Otherwise, everything is free on the WIDA Secure portal. Please do note that we do screener online for grades 1 through 12. For the younger grades, they do writing on paper though, because we don't expect students to be proficient in technology yet, but we also allow,
can you also, because some people didn't get your slides. So do you want to put the link in the chat? The other thing is, so all the slides that Megan sent went out to the current ALS distribution list. So if you're not on that distribution list, you should email me and copy Madeline. And Madeline's really good about putting the people in that need to be in our distribution list. We end up having, believe it or not, we have like 300 people on the distribution list, which includes teachers who said they want to be involved, and, other people. So it's not just ALS directors, but it's, all the people who are interested in working more conscientiously with Title III and MLs. So thanks, Megan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't put it in the chat as I present, but if anyone wants to volunteer to put what I said in the chat, please feel free. Otherwise, as soon as I end my presentation, I can. So, all right. Screener for kindergarten. Again, that is paper-based, one-on-one assessment, test administration. And then also we know that some students, they may have never been exposed to technology before, and giving them an online assessment just isn't appropriate, nor is it fair. So we do provide paper assessments. We house those at the state. If you ever need copies of paper assessments, please contact me and I will make sure we get those to you. Don't buy them. Please don't buy them. This is so exciting for me, and I feel like finally we will be having an alternate screener coming out very soon. I anticipate we should see that become available towards the spring, and we can start definitely using it to screen for next year for students that have been dually identified or potentially dually identified. Then we have our WIDA access and alternate access. This year's testing window, you'll see this a few times, January 8th to March 8th. Please use the entire test window because we need to make sure every student is given the opportunity to test. We, again, are an online state, but paper is available as necessary per your students' needs. That ordering can take place on your own. We will walk you through as we get closer to the testing window if you do need those supplies. And then kindergarten access is also a paper-based one-on-one test administration. Alternate access, again, paper-based one-on-one test administration. So we have our windows there. Any questions yet? All right, here we go. All right, so as an ALS director, you definitely are going to need 2 accounts. If you're like, I don't have either one of these accounts, or I only have one, or I'm not sure I have the right permissions, email me, let's check, let's make sure you have everything you need. The first account you're going to need is the WIDA Secure Portal account. This is the account in which you do all of your trainings to do test administrations. It is also the account where you are going to, depending on what your LEA has decided, if you're responsible for overseeing and ensuring that your test administrators have completed the trainings, this is where you're going to do that from. Thank you guys for putting that in the chat. And then this is also where you can get all screener materials, but it also is an opportunity for you to do professional learning. There are lots of self-paced learning courses for instruction with MLs. And then there are also Utah-specific webinars there. So any webinars we have and trainings we do, we record and they are housed there as well. So if you miss something, not to worry, they're there. So that is the WIDA Secure Portal account. The second account is called the WIDA AMS. That's the Assessment Management System. This is actually the platform in which you launch tests from. So you definitely need to have this account and have your technology coordinators have access to it, because this is where you get all of the technology downloads to put on student machines. This is where you can monitor student test completion. You can add students that come. You order materials. We order most materials for you, but LEAs are responsible for ordering alternate access materials and Braille materials. Since students that are taking those assessments, that needs to be determined by your team. It shouldn't be determined by us, the state, because you know your students' needs. This is also the account which you will complete data validation. If that is your responsibility, that is where you go in, make sure names are spelled correctly. You don't have students taking tests under multiple accounts. So if we need to merge things, we can, entering do not score codes. And also this is where you retrieve all your test scores. So again, 2 very, very important accounts. Email me, let me know if you need these accounts. I will say AMS has undergone some huge changes. So even for our veterans here, you are probably like, wow, it looks incredibly different, and navigating certain portions are very, very different. So there is a help button in the upper right-hand corner. There are videos that can walk you through how to do things. And again, you can reach out to me or you can reach out to DRC and they can help you through this new system. Some other responsibilities and dates to become familiar with is the WIDA checklist. We are currently in the process of updating that for this year, for testing this year. The ID and placement guidance, that is also, because things have just recently changed, that is also in the process of being updated. And then manuals, test administration manuals. One big change, and I am so excited about this, and I think you all are going to be excited too. We always do a pre-ID upload. What is that? In the fall, we will pull from UTrex that connects to your SIS, and we pull all of your students that have been identified, marked as EL, that have not been exited to be testing, and we roster them for you for testing. And we also order all your materials based on that for you. We used to only do that once, and that would happen in late October, early November. We don't test until January, so your rosters would change quite a bit, and those changes would be up to you. We now have requested to do a second pre-ID file, and we got approval, and it's happening this year. So that second pre-ID file is going to happen 1 week before, yeah, I know, I was excited. 1 week before testing actually takes place, we will update everything in AMS for you. It will not order more materials for you, but you don't have to worry about making those changes. So after that second pre-ID file, if you get a student that enrolls after that, then you are going to be responsible, but hopefully this takes a pretty big lift off your shoulders. We're really excited because we hope that accuracy in our students, that will be better. This should help with the data validation process. And again, you can spend time where it needs to be spent as well. You, again, will have to do your data validation. It is a 2-week time period. Those dates, again, are set. So that will be April 3rd to the 16th. We will send out emails with a step-by-step process. If you don't do data validation and errors aren't caught, it could create problems with student reporting. And if it's not caught and we aren't aware of it either after the fact, then a student could have scores split in many places, and the reports you get aren't going to be calculated accurately. So we know whether or not the student can actually be exited or still qualifies for services. So again, ask questions along the way. Score reports, they will be made available online May 2nd this year. And then always 2 weeks after that, they will come printed to you. So you do not need to worry about printing anything. And then of course, making sure that those score reports are distributed. Depending on your LEA and your needs, per Utah's testing ethics policy, which is legislated, it states that you have 3 weeks to get those reports sent out. If you are dependent on those paper copies for getting that sent out, you can start your 3 weeks once you receive the paper copies. But if you know we're going to communicate this out with the online stuff, then you can start your 3 weeks then. So it's where your LEA is at and really what are your needs. And then, of course, please communicate training opportunities to educators and test administrators. We want you to be making accounts, give people access, let them in and know about the process. And what are some training opportunities for this year? I'm actually really excited about, not that I'm not ever, but I'm really excited about this year. We will still have the self-paced workshops. I believe there are going to be 8 this year. Those will be the new updated ones, and new offerings are coming on September 1st. Those are again in your WIDA Secure portal. They are self-paced. and they're available all year. And then the ones that we, USBE, are hosting. The first one is going to be interpreting access for ELL's score reports for instruction. Big thanks and shout out to Granite School District because they are allowing us to host this meeting in person at their district office. This workshop is on the 14th of September. This is not just understanding score reports, it is understanding score reports and the implications it has for instruction for students. I want to look at an individual student and what now, knowing this data, what does that mean for me as an educator of this student? So that's going to be the first one. That is in person. Then the next one, again, because you've heard us already talk about it, speaking's a big one. We want to get into speaking even more, right? Those scores are the lowest. So we're going to do, these are webinars, so it'll be virtual and self-paced components. Nurturing speaking growth, that's going to take place. The webinars are November 2nd and the 9th. And I scheduled those for more of an after school time, so it doesn't have to hopefully interfere with teachers that need to be in the classroom working with students. And again, there is a self-paced one. We are going to do some assessment test administration webinars. So we're going to do access and alternate access. I know that there are great trainings online. All of those are being updated. The updates are going to roll out on the 1st, but because there have been so many changes to the AMS platform, we're going to be hosting that webinar. And also because as many of you helped with the field testing for alternate access last year, you know that alternate access has been completely updated and revised. And so there are quite a lot of differences if you are administering that one-on-one to students. So we're going to be offering those trainings virtually as well. And then the last one that we're going to do is scaffolding learning through language. Again, we want to really emphasize language usage, academic language usage in the classroom, and how can we scaffold those experiences in the classroom for students. And that one is a 3-part series webinars. Please sign up in Midas and send this out. Get everybody, please just come. We want people in these because, you know, they're there and they're available, and we partner with WIDA to bring these to you. All right, let's get into some WIDA updates. I know everyone's like, let's get to the SS stuff. Kind of holding off on that till the end because I know there's going to be lots of questions. So let's get through the easy stuff first. Screener reminders, we are at the beginning of the school year. Many of you are in that 30-day window right now. So remember, screening students, when they register at your school, they have to complete the home language survey. We have updated questions. We'll get there. But in order to screen students, you need to take a look at the home language survey, and there are 3 language questions about home language. If any one of those 3 questions say something other than English, then that will trigger the need for screening. One question I've gotten a lot of is, so students, when we screen them, if they get this score, right, will they not qualify anymore? It has stayed the same for entrance. Christelle.
Yeah, we actually have a question from Thais. It's clarifying, is the Midas speaking course different than the one that WIDA provided last year?
Yeah, it's updated. They update everything every year. So you'll see overlap, obviously, when it comes to best practices with speaking, but they update their stuff every year.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to say is that I actually sent out the agreed changes, revisions in the home language survey in English, and it's the one Megan and I worked on and got approved from Darren as well. And that was sent out. But the issue is it's not on the Title III website yet because we have to go through all these other things to get it on the website. So if you don't have the new revised one, then when I send this out with the link to all the other materials, those updated home language survey and then the exit letter, and then the annual letter, those have all been updated by Megan and myself. So I'll send that out again. And then the biggest issue is previously on the Title III website, they were all translated, but that's not going to happen. So, so what you need to do is to make sure that you get your translation services to translate those in a language that the families understand. Okay, so, and most of you actually have websites that have multiple languages anyway, so this shouldn't be too difficult. But if you have problems, you should email me. Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you for those reminders. And yes, Christelle, well, the hoops we have to jump through. We have submitted all of these requests and changes for our websites. USBE is going through a massive overall website migration right now. So anytime we submit changes, we've been told, like, you're just going to have to be patient. It's probably going to be several weeks till you actually see these changes take place. So just reach out to us and we can share those materials with you in the meantime. So yeah, thank you for that reminder. Back to screening. The entrance criteria, it did not change. It is still that overall 5.0. Okay, so if a student gets a 5.0 or higher overall composite on screener, then they are considered proficient. They do not qualify for language services. A 4.9 or lower does. A very common question I have gotten once people realize, oh, we now have a different entrance versus exit criteria. The reason why the entrance criteria did not change is because the assessments are different. A screener is just by nature, it's not going to be as robust and it's not going to provide as much data as a much more comprehensive access test does. So it is better to err on the side of caution to make sure that we are qualifying students that are entitled to services versus, ooh, we might have missed a few. We don't want that to happen. So entrance criteria remains the same. And guess what? If they really, truly are proficient, we're going to see that in the access score in the spring. Your timelines are 30 calendar days from the first day that your LEA starts school. So beginning of the year, 30 calendar days. After those 30 days, it then goes down to 10 school days. Okay. So that's for the remainder of the year, 10 school days. So 30 calendar days, then 10 school days. And then a common question I also get is, which grade level cluster do I use? That information is on the test, in the test administration manual on page 13. You can also see a screenshot of those clusters on this slide. All right. Again, AMS, tons of updates. So you will not see any trainings available right now for access. The screener trainings, because screening is happening, it does not reflect all the updates. That's why there's lots of help and videos embedded in AMS right now, but everything will be updated as of September 1st. You will see everything available again and updated per WIDA AMS. And again, there's a link so you can see information regarding those changes and some of the big overall changes. Okay, so again, thank you guys for hanging in there with the trainings as platforms get updated. And here are all the access dates in detail for this year. So you will be able to start ordering on Halloween. we will do the big overall ordering for you based on the first pre-ID file. And then we will have the second one. So we will pull the data from Utrex probably while you are all enjoying time off in December. And it will be submitted to WIDA a couple days before we actually start testing. You can start setting up test sessions that you need to in December. And please note, and this one always seems to be an issue. So we did discuss this with some LEAs based on calendars that were available at the time when we have to determine this. Districts will receive test materials on January 3rd or January 4th. You can go into WIDA AMS and track your materials so you know exactly when it's coming, but please make sure that people are there to sign for these. Otherwise, they're going to get shipped right back. So make sure people are in buildings to receive these. And then you can see again the rest of the reporting or the after testing. So materials being due, your window for data validation, reports. One thing I do want to note at the very bottom, because we do have the updated alternate access field test, which the reporting is going to be now on the same proficiency levels. No more A's, no more P's. Yay! It's going to be 1 through 6. Okay, so that's really exciting. And once the new standard setting verification has done, that's why you're going to get alternate access reports a little later. Once all of those proficiency levels have been determined, then we can start to discuss what does exiting look like for our alternate multilingual students. So, you know, if we need to take a look and have good discussions around what does exiting look like, because right now, let's be honest, based on the proficiency levels that are reported, it doesn't meet any criteria because it's totally different than how access is reported. So we've been waiting till it's been completely overhauled. We have new score reports and everything, and scoring and proficiency levels to actually consider what does exiting look like for students that are multilingual and have significant cognitive disabilities. So those will be coming later after standards verification has taken place. So please do note those will be coming in the fall of the following year. All right, here we go. All the SO amendments. This is where we have so many questions and you've gotten so many emails. So the very first thing, and I do want to say we are so excited that it's finally been approved. We have verbal and written approval of it. So we are ecstatic. I know, yay. So one of the big changes is the home language survey. Those home language survey questions have been updated and they align with what the Department of Justice and Office of Civil Rights has recommended for this. We also believe that this will really help in those identifications that have been taking place in Utah, where students have been identified in error. Because a parent might say, oh, you know, I taught my student how to speak to 10 in German, so they can speak, right? And not understanding the true purpose behind what is being asked. So those changes are updated and we are very hopeful that this will help weed out a lot of that erroneous misidentification, right? And so again, Christelle said she's going to send it out, right? Other changes that you are going to be seeing on there is it's so important that parents know that this, you know, based on this, their student will be screened. Those scores have to be reported to them. And also, if your student is deemed ML and they qualify for services, that they will also be given all the information about those services and also the option to opt out. And that comes in the annual notification letter. Yes.
So there's a question about, where is the approved Utah consolidated plan? Where is it posted? Is it posted on the website, or where can they get access to it? Because people
Yes. So great question. Thank you, Rhonda. On USBE's website, yeah, no, that's not happening right now because it's going to take weeks. It will be really soon, but you can access it. It is already live on the US Department of Education's website. And again, I can pull up that link and share it in the chat after. But yes, it is there. Unless somebody else on here has that link very handy, you're welcome to put it in the chat as well. All right.
I'll look, Megan. I hadn't seen it posted yet, but I'll look and post it if I can find it.
Okay. I knew that they said that they would have it live on there, so I assumed you said it. It should be. All right. So that's the first big change, home language surveys. Give us feedback. Let us know how it's going. You don't have to retroactively go back and re-register students because the change just took place as students were registering. So all we ask is that now as students are registering, it's happening updated as we go forward. Okay. All right. Another big. Go ahead.
Let me just say one thing during the home language survey. Okay, LEAs have to really work closely with registrars and people during registration, because there are registrars who make assumptions, and the assumptions they make end up causing serious difficulty when they assume that someone with a last name like Lopez or Estrada is not a native English speaker. So, you have to really work consistently with registrars in schools to help them not make these assumptions. And then we have students who are, designated, and then we have to go through the whole process of parents being really upset because they're not listened to, or there's certain assumptions. And then we have to go through the whole process of not identifying them. So misidentification with registrars based on the home language survey, is really incredibly troubling. It's troubling for all of us. So it's really important to work with registrars in the schools, principals working with registrars to help them create a welcoming environment for all kinds of diverse families. I mean, this is like really serious. You don't even know all the complaints that I get during registration.
Yeah.
About these issues.
Yeah, Crystal, thank you. You will notice that at the top of that home language survey, it does say trained staff, right? And that's part of this, right? And meaningful communication with parents and guardians and families. We can't operate on assumptions because, like that, it's pretty much illegal. We can't do that, right? We can't base anything on the way someone looks, their last names, right? Or even if they have an accent. We really don't know. But also, we need to honor what parents are putting on those home language surveys. We never know the full story. I've had LEAs reach out and say, well, they put all English, and I know that student speaks other languages. Well, maybe maybe you don't, and you never know a student's home situation. Maybe they did come from a situation in which they were raised multilingual and something happened and they found themselves in a new home, and now it is really only English in that home. We can't ever just make assumptions that we know everything going on in students' lives. So we do need to honor what parents put and guardians put, and we can't ever force anyone to change anything. We can have open, honest, safe communication and conversations with families though, so we can all have a shared understanding of what's going to be best for these students, for our students. More screener information. And this is another change that took place in the past. You will still see this on our website because again, it hasn't been able to be updated. In the past, we said if a student leaves and comes back, if it's within 2 years, they don't need to be rescreened. That has since been changed because the US Department of Education was like, yeah, no, that's not going to work for us anymore. So if a student leaves and comes back within the same academic year, you do not have to rescreen the student. And again, that's leaving Utah. If a student leaves the state of Utah and comes back the next academic year, you would have to screen the student again. We need valid information to know where that student is at because we cannot assume we knew what took place during that time the student was gone. So again, within the same academic year, you do not have to screen, but if it is different academic year, so even if they leave in May and come back September, they've left the state of Utah, we do need to screen again and qualify them for services. It is so important that we make sure that we are keeping our screener data as well. Okay, please put copies of those reports in students' cumulative files, whether they're paper cumulative files or electronic. We are starting discussions on how can we start to house this data. We're really hopeful that things are going to go the right way, but please. And if students transfer within Utah, that data has to transfer with them. Okay, because students should not be screened when they move from one school to another school to another school. We have heard reports of students being screened 7 years in a row. That should not be happening for students. Thais, you have a question?
Yeah, Thais has one.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. So if they've left the state and they come back and we rescreen, and that screener, the most recent one, shows that they get a 5 or higher, then we exit them even though we don't have an access score to say that, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Exit criteria. It did change. I gave you some of that rationale already. It was definitely determined that our exit criteria was way too high. We had some of the lowest exit rates in the country. But even with our 5.0 overall, we still had students exiting not being proficient in speaking. So we said, we know we need to lower this, but how can we also address this lack of speaking proficiency? Because this is not acceptable for our students to be able to be exited and still not have the opportunity to use and speak academic English language. We just were like, this is not acceptable. So that's why that secondary piece has been added. And for this year, because at the time, last spring when we got our scores, the law and the rule still was that overall 5.0. So you had to exit those students last spring. We don't get to go back and hold anyone hostage and say, nope, you have to be back in. Those students had to be, because they met the criteria at the time, they had to be exited. But now that we have the updated criteria, you must also now exit students that have met this new criteria. And since we only have last spring's access scores available to us to determine that exit, this is going to be the only time that we can apply both criteria to 1 year's scores. So this next spring, the 2024 access, we will only be applying the updated 4.2 with 3.5 speaking. Okay. All right. Christelle has updated the exit letters. Please make sure that those are being sent. And in our discussions, we know that part of exiting, and this again is in Utah law, having a conference, that's really hard at the beginning of the year. And we recognize that's going to be a big lift. The law does state a conference needs to be scheduled and held within 30 days of the student exiting to talk about what monitoring is going to look like and, you know, what is the plan for helping this student achieve in all content areas. If you get those scheduled within 30 days, but they're not held within the 30 days, we're going to try to be lenient on that because this is all getting tossed on you. So we have advised and said, if you let parents know that they've been exited and those conferences take place by the fall conferences, we are willing to support you and back you on that because it's a big ask, especially at the beginning of the year. In the future, it will have to be the 30 days though.
Yeah, the other thing is, for monitoring, I actually have a sample of a monitoring individual learning plan that you would actually be able to use. So when the student is exited, you can use this model and you can adapt it in relationship to really buoying up the monitoring. And the reason we're doing this is something that both will come up probably in the next slide.
Yep. When the student exits, please make sure you are marking your SIS correctly. Every SIS is different. Talk to your help desks because there's so many, we don't know them all. Some SIS, I've heard you mark them fluent. Some I've heard you mark them former. Talk to your SIS help desks, but please update them. Make note of the exit date. Make note of their final scores that they were being based on for exiting as well. Okay, they are no longer considered EL. You will not be collecting Title III funds for those students anymore, but they are on monitoring for 4 years. Okay, so oh, one other thing that just came to my attention yesterday afternoon that I am really working hard on. We were told for the LEAs that use Aspire, USBE's Aspire SIS, they have not been able to actually exit students in the SIS based on the new criteria. I have contacted Aspire already. I'm working with Paula Huber. We are trying to get this fixed because the system won't let you put something lower than 5 to exit a student. So they are very aware of this issue and they are working on it. Darren Nielsen has become involved to try to speed this process up. So please do note that the state knows they are working on updating the Aspire system.
So Bev has her hand up and there's also a question from Jenny. So Bev, do you want to?
So Megan, the students that are in monitoring though are still considered in the ML student group for TSI, CSI, or correct? For those 4 years, their scores still get grouped into that ML student group. Am I understanding that correctly?
This is definitely a good question that we can pose to Anne Michelle, but and Tracy and your team, you can chime in here anytime you want, like Megan, blah. But it's my understanding that no, those scores during monitoring, because they are not marked as EL in your SIS. So when we're pulling data for accountability, those students shouldn't be counting.
I think that they do count for the multilingual student group, the EL student group, for a few years while they're in that monitoring status. And The accountability manual goes through and clarifies. The reason is because there's such a drop when you pull those monitoring kids out that not including that group of students in that monitoring section makes it really difficult for those multilingual students to, as a group, to be able to reach that exit status. So I will go find that paragraph and the link, and I'll put it into the chat.
Okay.
Yay, thank you.
Tracy, so you're saying that you think that might be possible that those students for a certain number of years in monitoring will continue to be part of the equation when figuring out, like, our student groups for those, like for
Yes.
the 25% and achievement and all that stuff.
Yes. Yes, I think it's for a number of years, not necessarily for the number of monitoring specifically. I think it's just a certain number of years after they enter monitoring status. But I'm going to go find the paragraph and the document so you will have it.
And can I ask a clarifying question too? Because if I have it, I think others might as well. Is this just for federal accountability, or does it also count for state for like, is it, I'm sorry, spring? Now it's past, skipping my mind. Is it Springboard and Elevate? Did I just get that wrong? I'm sorry if I butchered that.
Say the question again. I'm sorry, Megan.
Does, when Bev asked, do the monitoring students count for TSI and CSI? That would be for federal accountability, correct?
Yeah, they get counted. I think if I'm understanding the question right from Bev, is that we have this multilingual group. You need to have 10 students inside of that group in order to have a student group. And if a student moves into that monitoring status, how do they continue to be included in that group? And yes, my understanding is they will, and we'll have that pasted here. But when you're looking at the overall school performance, they've always counted in the overall performance. And when you're looking at Springboard schools, which is a state system, you're looking at the overall ranking of non-Title I schools. Springboard schools have not yet been identified. They will be in 2 years. And when you look at non-Title I schools, they will be ranked, and the lowest 5 non-Title I schools that are elementary and junior high level schools will be Springboard schools, and the lowest 2 high schools, when you rank non-Title I schools, will become Springboard schools. So, yeah. And it also is true that they would count for CSI, which again is a whole school definition based on performance for Title I schools. And I see Megan Tippett has made a link to the accountability technical manual, and inside of that document, we'll get the exact page number so you can go find that specific paragraph, because it is one paragraph out of 50 pages. But
can we make
clarify.
sure that that's the updated technical manual?
It's the 2023, but there will be another one that's going to come based on the changes that have just been approved yesterday from the Department of Ed. So we don't have a technical manual that reflects those shifts, but I don't believe there was a change in whether or not those multilingual learners that are in monitor status, I don't think there was a change in that policy, in that process.
Thank you so much for stepping in and saving me there. I'm so glad I'm learning this right now. Accountability is not my world, so thank you.
We have another question, which is from, let's see.
So the exit date.
Yeah.
Okay. Put the exit date that's actually taking place, right? So if your school year's already started and those students have been receiving services, right? And you're like, I need to go update that today, put today, because that's the honest date. They were still receiving services. So put the actual date you are exiting them, right? I wouldn't go back further. I would say this is the date that that we're actually exiting them, because that's when monitoring starts.
So I think Tracy and they're going back and forth. So do you want to update us on the specific language, Tracy?
Yep, it just been pasted, excuse me, into the chat. At the bottom of page 20 in the document that Megan Tippett had pasted, it shows an additional note on EL students for accountability that ESSA allows for students to be monitored for up to 4 years after reaching proficiency, and also that they will be included in the accountability calculations for EL student group. So that would give you a sense about how long those students remain a part of the multilingual or the EL student group for TSI and ATSI.
They're just not counted for growth anymore. Okay. I like that.
WIDA growth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. That does seem a little more fair representation of the student group. I like that. Okay, thanks, guys. Oh, I like it. Okay, moving on. So again, please communicate all of these changes to your colleagues. Exit letters, they need to be sent home. You have 30 days, and then the parent-student teacher conferences must be completed. And as we said, and this again is part of federal law, Title III law, of meaningful communication with parents, letting them understand, what does this mean? What is monitoring? And you really understanding what is our LEA's monitoring plan and what takes place, and what is our communication plan with parents during this monitoring phase, right? We still need to be meeting with parents and be discussing the students' progress with them on a regular basis. So please just make sure that parents and students and teachers also are very clear on what is monitoring going to look like and what's available to me during that time. Christelle, did you want to add anything here about this component?
Yeah, as I said, I'm going to actually send out a sample individual learning plan for monitoring, so you all can sit down and organize it in a way that would be the most helpful. Because I'll just give you another concrete example. When some teachers assume that a student is struggling and it's connected to a language, they start referring students to special ed. This just actually happened, and someone told me about this situation that was, to me, very distressing, based on the assumptions. And it was on visual appearance of the child being Asian, and his mother, who is actually a physician, who was a refugee from Vietnam, and they speak English at home. But all of a sudden, this teacher was going to, and said this actually to the parent about, being referred to a special ed, child find process because of the language that they speak at home. Well, they speak English at home. They happen to be Asian, right? So this ends up being a pretty serious problem when you're monitoring, and all of a sudden teachers jump to the conclusion that it's based on language and they should be rescreened and put back into, a language support program, which is really incredibly problematic. Right. So I think, Megan, this is a segue into.
It was perfect. And yeah, I just really want to reinforce, being multilingual is not a disability. I know I'm preaching to the choir here. So during monitoring, and this is, again, this is law. If during monitoring, and again, you got to make sure, take a look at that monitoring plan. Are you collecting data? Are you documenting things, right? If a student is not progressing academically in their content areas, and through monitoring, through data collection, everything, you can say with confidence that it is a language barrier, an academic English language barrier. Okay. And it's not just making an assumption. It's not just saying, oh, this student's not doing their work in class, they're falling behind, right? Like you have to root out everything. Again, no assumptions, no assumptions. This is why we have monitoring. It must be documented and the team must discuss this. It can't just be someone who's just like, do something with this student. That happens too much. We don't want that happening anymore. If through that process, it is very much pointing, evidence shows that this is still an academic English language barrier, then you can screen the student again. So that in no way can we prohibit screening a student again. This has to include parental involvement in communication, okay? Please make sure that that is happening. If the student, and if the student is proficient, they're proficient, okay? That means the evidence and everything you might have been assuming, and it really was pointing to that. But if they're proficient, they're proficient, okay? And you're going to have to start looking at other things of why this student isn't progressing academically then.
So Bev has her hand up, and before Bev speaks, Weber has the best protocol process for a cross grade level team meeting with all the appropriate people to determine whether it's connected to language or not. And so I'll be sending those documents out to you as well. And this is a really important piece to think through. So Bev, do you want to ask your question?
So Megan, in that situation, if we are re-screening, do we still use the 5.0 on the screener since it's not the initial screener, since they've exited and now we're maybe reclassifying?
It's like starting the process from scratch again. Yes, great question. Okay.
I send out the Weber protocol to all of you when I send all this other information out. And Tracy, you just put in something with, or somebody put something in for the actual plan, the updated Utah plan.
That's where it will be posted when the Department of Ed gets it updated, but I don't see it listed yet. You can sort it there to see Utah's list.
Okay, thanks.
Maybe they have website updates too. Again, yes, it is like starting the process again, but you know, just like Christelle's been saying, it can't just be, oh, we think this student, like that monitoring, it's got to be good. These things need to be documented. You got to have evidence for it, right? So, and again, also don't just be like, well, let's assume there's special education too. There are very rigorous processes through IDEA and FAPE and everything that determine how that process goes as well. Tracy Gooley, just so you know, we have been able to actually hire a second full-time alternate assessment specialist. Her name is Jessica Wilhelm, but what this has done is actually allowed Tracy Gooley, our veteran alternate assessment specialist, to really start to get involved in our assessment of multilingual learners with significant cognitive disabilities. And she is actually going to participate in the accommodations subcommittee for WIDA. So we have a stronger voice as Utah in decisions that are being made about our dually identified multilingual learners. So she will work with you and help you when it comes to the process of just special education identification. She can point you to the right resources, and also our dually identified multilingual learners. So Tracy Gooley, she has the time now to get more involved, which is fantastic. Please contact her if you have questions when it comes to that, but I can't say it enough. Don't just refer students without going through proper monitoring. All right. And then contact information, please send emails our way. I will always say email is best, because we're in meetings so often that a lot of times we can't get to the phone, but emails, you know, we can sneakily in meetings respond to you. And if you need to, we can set up meetings during that time, but please ask. These are big changes. It's a process. Information is not readily available on websites due to other, you know, challenges. But we want to support you. We are here, and let us know, like, are there situations that are coming up? Like if an LEA had not told me yesterday about the Aspire issue, the SIS Aspire issue, there's no way we would have known, and we wouldn't have been able to help in resolving that problem. So please always let us know, where are the pain points as we go through this transition? What can we be doing to support you? And that's what I got for today. Oh, Christelle, you're on mute.
Thanks, Megan. The presentation will always be sent out. So this is recorded and it'll be on the, you know, on our playlist. And so when I send it out to everybody, you'll have all the information. You know, so that's the way in which we try to make sure that you have access to every single recording, as well as all the information with the PowerPoints, which would be, you know, Tawilla's and Ellie's work, and the Weber protocol, and the design for the ILP plan, for the individual learning plan, as well as the protocol for assessing students that we use for competency-based, when there are students who come and, you know, the Taliban has burned all their documents, or they have been evacuated from the Ukraine or whatever. You know, these are ways that we show that we're a welcoming community, and that, you know, every single student and family that comes to Utah has a right to a quality public education, right? That's our commitment. So we have an extra 20 minutes for me to stay online and talk personally with you, or individually. The other thing is technical assistance. When I do, and I've visited with people and done observations, classroom observations, and people who end up being monitored LEAs, you know, it's really about focusing on the things that you're doing really well. So the official report ends up being having a list of commendations and teacher commendations as well, based on the observation tool that is now being used in Tooele and Ogden and other places. And just an update on the funding. When LEAs don't have the minimum 10,000, they have the right to join a consortium and then identify a fiscal agent. So we actually have consortiums. Now, part of the issue ends up being that we can't get the consortiums and the MOUs signed and all of that done until everybody is back at school and in their offices. Just yesterday, we ended up finishing the final consortium lists. And then what will happen is, after the approval, it'll go down to financial operations, and all the flow through, the final allocation of the flow through Title III money will be available for you. And in the Utah grant system will be the annual self-assessment that helps you become knowledgeable about compliance, federal law, state law. And the reason we do that is that when you self-assess, you can use that to start evaluating program effectiveness and how you want to align resources, right? That's really the point. I mean, the thing that's really interesting is, and I think Ogden does this, they've done this for a while, they send out the self-assessment tool to their principals. So the principals actually understand and can fill out how their work is aligning with the strategic plan of the LEA. So these are all tools and mechanisms to help you build the capacity of your district to respond more effectively through evaluating program effectiveness. Spending, $50,000 on a new software program without evaluating the impact, from my viewpoint, is fiscally irresponsible. I mean, there is no silver bullet. So the question ends up being, how do we leverage all the learning across the state to help us better meet the learning needs of the students, as well as the adult learning needs, of the teachers and the principals and the district personnel. So if anyone has anything to say before everybody else logs off, I'll stay on for about another 20 minutes. But everything will be sent out to you so that you have access to it. And I want to thank Maggie for joining us, and Tracy, and Jim Martin, and anybody else from USBE, and all the wonderful people from Tooele and Wasatch and Murray and Canyons, and all the questions. And of course, Megan, in trying to, we're all trying to negotiate the changes in a way that's supportive. Okay, so I'm just staying on. So I have some approving. This is from Robin Williams. We're approving addendum to our local school board policy.
So Emery JR asked a question about what are they supposed to do with the process for that, for the HB 302.
Yeah.
And my understanding, and I believe directive from Christelle, is that we were to ensure that that became part of our school board policy. And I know that Ogden led the way with that, and then just kind of working that back end with some local agencies to get that. And for Murray School District, we already had a parent involvement policy. And so for me, it was adding in new language that was very specific. And again, I appreciate both having the law to look at as far as their requirements, as well as then what Ogden put out there, so we could put that in almost verbatim, but then a couple of nuances to Murray City School District. I will be on a second reading in a couple of weeks, and then we will be fully approved with that addition to our policies.
And Christelle, I'll send you, and I know I worked with Robin and Michelle a little bit. We had our second reading and it was approved by the board. So I'll send you ours so that you can kind of see what the board approved.
Yeah, so this is a huge, just, I mean, the big thing is to really understand like these amazing legislators who are our allies in engaging families from different language backgrounds. So Robin and Bev they're actually gonna share. The other thing is on the Title III website from last year, there's actually the model policy that we were required to actually do. But the point is that the legislation is there, the actual wording of the legislation and the language policy. And then you would be using it, as Robin and other people have done, to make sure that it actually fits into maybe a family engagement policy that's already established, right? So it's really beneficial to have, a group of colleagues really supporting each other and giving examples so that you can see that. Any other comments or questions?
Christelle, I have a question. This is Anya with Alpine. Is the policy need to be approved and through the board prior to a submission of the plan, or does it have to be in process? Like say we're scheduled to be, in December, but our plan is due in November.
Yeah, no, so that's a really good question, because what I did last year is, I think the question on the self-assessment is something like, where are you in the process of getting your policy approved? Right, because we understand that you have to go through all these processes with your board before you even get a policy approved. And so in the application, it'll just ask where you are. So you don't need to worry about that.
Thank you.
And Stephanie, they have their policy, and they'll be sending me examples as well. So we'll have the ability to see the way in which different LEAs have used the legislation and the model policy to actually shape something that would be immediately relevant for the work that they're doing. and, you know, their LEA strategic plan as well. Other questions?
Crystal, I have a question about the home language survey. So we had some students enroll this year that have English listed on all of their questions, but they were in an EL program at a previous school and they have WIDA scores and they haven't tested out. Do we continue them in the EL program or do we go off of their home language survey? I'm not sure what to do with those.
Well, the biggest thing is you have to actually meet with the family and the parents. If you look at the way in which it's organized, is there are lots of reasons why this happens. And if you don't really know what's going on with them, you can't make a really sound decision. So Megan, do you want to say something about this? But the big thing is you have to actually meet with the families that have done this, because it's obvious that the other thing I'm going to say, and I hope this isn't too so incredibly, well, it's just really honest. When I observe classrooms and I go to ELD classrooms, you all have to evaluate the actual effectiveness of your ELD programs and the way in which you segregate students in ELD classrooms that really do not provide access to academic English and the content. This is like really serious for so many reasons. And again, it goes back to this idea that, you know, every student who is learning English has a civil right to content academic English. You know, and so the question is, if the kids are put into ELD classes and the quality of that instruction isn't supporting their academic language in the content areas, then you have to evaluate the effectiveness of your ELD and the ESL classes that you're providing for them. This is like a huge problem. I mean, I've gone to these classrooms. It's serious. So we have to really think about what happens with students. And we say we have a language services program, but the ELD classes in the schools aren't really supporting academic English. So, you know, I'm just being as clear as possible in that. And if you ever want me to come and do observations with you, you know, I'd be happy to do that. You just have to email me. Megan, do you want to say something?
Yeah, 100% agree with what Christelle just said. You definitely need to initiate safe conversations with that family and really understand why that happened. And again, going back to what I said earlier, you know, we never know what's taken place in a child's home. You know, again, like moves, anything, living with new families, and really understanding what's taken place. I mean, and we do see this also. Again, that's why it's so crucial that we have documentation and we keep everything, right? Was the student screened in the first place at the prior LEA that they came from? Or okay, what can we see what that initial home language survey was? And so we have access scores, but, you know, could it have also been an erroneous identification? The family really is all English. We need to know more before we can determine next steps, because we cannot assume and we just don't know. So have conversations, and it could be a situation in which Christelle just kind of communicated to us that maybe at their previous LEA, being multilingual was like they were being segregated and they felt targeted, and it wasn't what was best for their student. And so the family's experience with the services provided may have very much so shaped what they were going to do going into the next LEA. And so providing, again, safe place for parents to let us know their concerns, and also a way for us to let them know that we're here to support you and we're going to do the best that we can for your student and their individual needs, right? And this is what our language services are going to look like, and providing a safe place for those families and that community.
So another example that has happened in Weber School District is that when parents don't want their students in language services, and you realize they have the right to deny language services, not the testing, but they have the right to deny language services. It's very clear. So you can't really force a student into a language services program unless you're meeting with the family. And the other thing that Weber has done is when they meet with the family, they actually take the family on a tour of the language services program in the school that the student will be enrolled in, and then explain to how that will support their students' academic success. Right. So that's a big thing in relationship to what does this language services program look like? Because, it doesn't help to be critical of the other language services program, but we don't know what their experience was or what their students' experience was. Right. So I would suggest that. And Lauren, if we want to talk offline or you want to email me and you want me to come in, you just let me know. Okay. Okay. Thanks. Any other questions? Yes.
Following up on Lauren's question, so we had a student that was in ESL and was receiving services, and the parents did not want their child to be pulled out of class because of the fact that they were falling behind on that subject. So when they registered to our school district, they just put English all across. They didn't want any services. They didn't want to be pulled out for testing. They didn't want anything because they had a really bad experience with the previous ESL tutor. So like you said,
that's their right. That's their right. They don't have to be in language services. They don't have to be there. So Griselda, I hate
yes.
But the issue is they can deny language services. It's very clear. The way in which you work with them is to help them understand that the assessment is a way in which they can be informed about how their students are actually achieving academic English, right? Because that's a different point. But they have the right not to have students in language services programs.
Yeah, and I would just say again that those conversations are crucial, right? And if that student has been identified as EL and it wasn't erroneous, and we know it, like that is the situation, right? They don't have to be in the services, but again, they have to be given the opportunity to engage in the assessments, so we know their civil rights are being met, and that their academic needs are being met.
Yeah, that's Maggie's question. There's no opting out of WIDA. And the reason there's no opting out of WIDA is because it's a civil rights issue that shapes the way in which the responsibility of the school is meeting the needs of the student to learn English. That's the point. It's a huge civil rights issue.
Mm-hmm. And you will notice, and I will pull up the link so you know exactly where to find this and put it in the chat, but the parental exclusion form, better known as opt-out of testing, does not have WIDA on it because it is directly tied to a student's civil rights. In almost every instance, when a parent was like, my student will not be taking this test, when I've had the opportunities to sit down and understand where the parents are coming from, what their concerns were, and actually help maybe calm some fears and explain really what the test is about, and maybe mitigate some myths about it, and for them to understand that as a parent, you want this data because this is the data you have to show that the school is serving the student and meeting their civil rights to an equitable education, right? And so most parents, when they understand the tie to a student's civil rights, they don't fight anymore on it because they want their students for their rights to be met, and they want the data and evidence to back it up if it's not. And are there some parents that are still going to be like, absolutely not? And who knows what happened? We don't know why. I mean, you can't opt a student out. And and you as an LEA are going to be in a tough position when a parent still is like, no, I'm not going to even send my kid to school then. That's not what's going to be best for the kid. You can't force a kid to sit down at a computer and take a test, but you do have the obligation to give the student the opportunity to test.
Yeah, I think the other issue again is, and there are people who, you know, if you want me to meet with administrators or other people, I'm happy to do that. The point is, when families are kept in the dark, and this is the problem from my viewpoint. I mean, I deal with this all the time. Parents don't know that there's a DLI program where kids can actually become literate in their own language. They have no idea about the biliteracy seal. They have no idea what language services is. They have no idea about their civil rights to actually demand the school do the best quality instruction for the students instead of pulling them out and putting them, you know, with not qualified paraprofessionals. When this communication is not communicated, we have the Office of Civil Rights, you know, gathering up complaints against districts. We have, you know, several districts. This is a history in Utah of districts being under the Office of Civil Rights, being under the Department of Justice. Well, why is that? I mean, people have to better understand their obligations in relationship to the rights that not only Utah, but this country affords students of quality public education, a free, appropriate public education.
Christelle, I just want to say, and Megan, I appreciate this conversation because I feel like I need to get more educated in this area, and I have learned a lot. And so just to reiterate and just to make sure, then by all means, when parents don't want their students testing, it really, we're still going to be testing and assessing their student. And I understand the reason why. Now I do. And so I just want to make sure, even if the parent wants to remove their student from taking that WIDA assessment, we don't abide by what the parent wants. Is that right?
That's a great question, Veronica. And again, it's we have kind of two competing laws here. So we have civil rights, and then we have parent rights. And Utah is a very big parent rights state. So again, normally this is mitigated by having a crucial conversation with the parents, right? There are instances when parents still 100% are going to refuse. And so the best guidance I can give you, because it is super tricky, is document everything, document everything for starters. And let the parents know, like, we understand your concern. We know that that you do not want your student tested. We are obligated to give the student and provide the student the opportunity to test. Okay. Hey, we're going to call you on down for testing and everything. And if the student says, my parents said I don't have to take this test, I'm not taking this test, the student can refuse, right? Like, students refuse testing all the time. That's nothing new. We deal with this on a daily basis, right? Document that the opportunity was given. Okay. Because you are giving them a right to engage in their civil right. So you have to provide the opportunity and let the parents know we are obligated to provide your student the opportunity. So please be aware your student will be still presented with that opportunity. Okay. But
thank you for that. I'm sorry for interrupting, Megan. No, I just want to say thank you for that, because this conversation here in these past couple of minutes have been, well, the entire presentation, but this right here has really brought a lot of clarity to me. So thank you both.
You're
But-
welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah.
So we're gonna actually move on. So if you have a question that relates to everybody, we're happy, Megan and I are happy to stay on. But everyone else, we've had a really long time together, and I think I'm the only, maybe I'm not, the only USBE person. We don't put breaks in because for lots of reasons. And one is the kind of conversation that we actually have has a direct impact on what you're actually going to do with schools and teachers and in the classroom. So when we actually have time for promising practices, it's about, really focusing on learning together and learning, what's happening throughout the state and some of the most amazing work being done across the state. So if you don't have a specific question that, refers to pretty much everybody's practice, then we'll close off the meeting. And thank you for your stamina. I mean, this was, this was 9 to 4 minutes after noon. So thank you so much. And Griselda, I want to apologize for cutting you off. And if you want to stay and have a conversation or email me, we can do a private Zoom meeting. Thanks, Tracy, for attending. Anna, very nice to see you. Monty, thanks for sharing your great experience with the high school student. Really impressive. And Stephanie, thank you. Anya, thanks for asking the question. Sharon, wonderful to see you. Thanks, Ogden. Thanks, Chelsea, for being here. Appreciate it. Rhonda, it's always nice to see you.
Are you taking questions? I have a couple.
Okay, you just have to wait though until everybody else gets off.
Okay.
And Lauren, you should email me and we can meet.
Okay, I think I got my question answered. That was very helpful, so thank you. I did have one more logistical question, so I'll just wait for a minute if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Lauren. Hey, Monty, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick clarifying one.
Yep.
I understand the opting out and how that works and work with parents all the time on that. But I do have some that I've met with in the past that were said they wrongly put in the wrong, stuff for Spanish or whatever that was. And in those cases, we can go back, right, and undo basically we're getting rid of all that documentation though when we do that in our power school.
Well, part of the issue is you have to actually use the process and document the way in which they were misidentified. And you have to keep that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
And this, I want you to know that this happens more often than not. And I've worked with Aaron Bruff on this. And the whole issue is this misidentification ends up happening more than you would think.
Right.
And so you have to document what actually happened and how that misidentification happened. And then you change the coding. And that's what Aaron and I have talked about very consistently. Does that help, Monty?
Yeah, that helps. What if they really didn't misidentify, but they're trying to do they had that bad experience and they're trying to I'm in a new district, it's English. We have to follow the English. Is that correct?
Well, remember, they can opt out of all the language services programs anyway, but not testing. So it just goes back to the same thing.
Right. But some parents they want to opt out of that test too. And I explain they can't. So am I allowed to follow their new thing that was English, even though their story is not really legitimate?
Well, I guess that goes back to the issue of working with the parents in a way that they actually understand that the student can't be can't be reclassified as English only, and that they
Okay.
have to be. So that's the other thing. I mean, the other question is, yeah, that's actually federal law. And the other issue ends up being when the student starts falling behind, and then they see, it's really about, and you can say this to parents, you can say, this is a way to hold the school responsible for providing the quality education that your child deserves, right? I mean, that's kind of the language you use. So I don't know if that's helpful, but let me know.
No, it is. That makes sense to me, and it's always been a little gray to me. Now it's still gray, but I understand the gray.
Okay, good.
All right, thank you.
Bonnie, thank you. And thank you for talking about, that wonderful experience we had with the high school student. It was, wonderful. You should be really proud of the work that you're doing. Okay, so Lauren, Tina, Michael, Rhonda, and S. Wright, what questions do you have? We're not going to take USBE questions until we get all the LEA questions.
So this is another question. If a student comes to us and their home language survey says they speak another language and they were previously tested, like they've taken the WIDA test, but it's been more than a year, but they haven't left Utah schools. So like I had a kid that came to me from another school, but they weren't tested at their previous school, but they were tested at the school before that. Do I need to screen them again or just continue them in a program if that's what they choose?
Megan?
Okay, so they came from another Utah LEA school. Is that what you said specifically?
So,
Sorry.
yeah, they came from a Utah LEA where they were not tested, but their Utah LEA previous to that, they were tested. So it's been like maybe a year or two since they've been tested, but they've been in Utah schools. Do I need to rescreen them?
Not if they've already been qualified and you have that evidence in the CUME file. And if that doesn't come over to you, then get into the data gateway, look at all their previous schools and say, hey, why isn't this in here? I need this information. Because if all of a sudden you're like, they have 1 year of a WIDA access test 3 LEAs ago, what's going on there? Like and again, bizarre, crazy things happen. Students with same names, the wrong student actually goes in and tests, right? And so really what documentation do we have? And so you do have to do a little research and investigation to see. So if you're seeing, did the last LEA actually not serve this student and do anything? That's a problem, right? Or was there a mistake made or something like that? Okay, so again, like we really need to get to the root of what is the evidence, the documentation, and everything show us and tell us. But if we do find that the student was legitimately screened and qualified for services, engaged in access testing, and then the next LEA dropped the ball, shame on them, then no, you don't have to rescreen them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.